Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Behind Your Eyes, where my guest today is Wendy van Allen. Hi, Wendy. It's a
Good
joy to
morning.
have you here, and could you please introduce yourself to everyone?
Yes, good morning. I'm Reverend Wendy van Allen. I'm an interspiritual minister. I also, interspirituality is dear to me as it's kind of encapsulates my belief system. I practice more than one faith tradition. My main faith traditions are earth-based and
Mhm,
nature-based. I've been a practicing minister and priestess, let's say, for many years. I
mhm,
was ordained in 2012 already.
mhm,
And since then, I've kind of had a big transformation in my career. I was working in corporate, I was doing human resources. Had other, I have an undergraduate degree in anthropology. So I was
mhm,
an archaeologist for a short time, which was really one of my passions. But then I
mhm,
had kids and I needed to be a mom.
mhm,
And after I was ordained, I really felt a calling. And I never thought of myself as a minister, being
mhm.
that my faith traditions are non-traditional.
Right.
But I kind of just felt that leading, like, let's do this. Fits with what you want. And since then, I've received a master's degree in clinical counseling. I started practicing spiritual counseling before that, and when the pandemic hit,
Mhm,
I was like, well, if I get my master's, I can actually, transition out of human resources into mental health counseling.
mhm. Wow.
And thank
Interesting
you.
journey already.
Yeah. And I wrote my book, Relighting the Cauldron, Embracing Nature Spirituality for the Modern
Mhm,
World, because um, nature spirituality to me is a modality. It's actually a very legitimate practice that may have different forms
mhm,
among different people and cultures, but it's really rooted in the most ancient beliefs
mhm.
of humanity.
Right.
And my book really kind of speaks to that. And again, another COVID gift was the time to kind of
Mm,
gather my thoughts and put it together and put it out to the universe.
yeah. Well, we'll dive a lot deeper into
Thank
those
you.
topics a bit further on, but I always start with the same question, and that is a sincere, how are you doing?
I'm feeling very good. Thank you. I'm kind of feeling like I'm enjoying my work, but I'm also have my eye on the world and going, wow, things have been really profound lately with the state
Mm,
of crises that are going on around the globe.
right. Yeah, it's kind of scary, but also sort of empowering in a way to know that there's this shift happening and we can make a
Hmm.
change in that shift.
Absolutely, Suzanne. And listening to your podcast and hearing some of the people that you've interviewed, I'm sure that you agree, and so many have felt that this shift
Oh,
is
yeah.
coming. And I speak about that in my book, and I really believe that we are in a paradigm shift. And while some
Hmm.
people may hold on to that as like the end of the world and this is the end times, and in certain, let's say, belief systems that feels true,
Hmm.
but to me it's just a it's a turning point in our human evolution, in our
Hmm.
planetary evolution. And I remind myself when I get upset that I believe in reincarnation and I came back for this reason, because
Right,
the best thing we can do is, we may not see it in our lifetimes, but by laying seeds and
right.
groundwork for the world we want is what we can hope for.
Mm, I couldn't agree more. And I've also read your book here. I'm
Thank you, I
putting it out
appreciate
there.
that.
And you reveal in the book that how we can save the planet with these nature-based spiritual practices. And yeah, can you please share more of that wisdom?
Thank you. So, one of the core beliefs among the various cultural and religious systems that I speak to
Mm,
in the book is that the earth is safe.
mhm,
That is, the earth is actually a living entity. The earth is our mother. Another really important one is that all of nature, all around us, has spirit, has consciousness,
Mhm.
and it actually connects to the idea that we are within this beautiful matrix, let's even say, that we're not separate from it, that we're
Mhm.
not better, we're not worse, we're not, the elite of the universe, nor are we the groveling sinners that in some
Mhm.
belief systems, it's emphasized.
Right.
We're actually this luminous being that has this consciousness that connects us to our planet,
Mhm.
and we have a great responsibility to her.
Mhm.
And
Oh
I
yeah.
think that that shift in consciousness to really begin, and it's very different from what we've been kind of what's been, predominant in the Western world for the last, 5, 6,000 years, has been like this shift towards the earth as like inert matter, that it's just something we can exploit, that we're
Right.
dominant over,
Mhm.
and with that idea, that understanding of the earth as the mother planet, as this sacred being,
Mhm.
we look to ourselves as feminine, as women, and to
Mhm.
reclaim the divinity within ourselves, and that's
Mhm.
another very connected point that I make in my book. And it can't be said enough, is like, how did we get to this point
Mm.
that, we exalt this idea of um, complete dominance and militaristic might and
Mm. Just this divide.
subordinating others, right? Like,
Right.
there's this division, male,
Right.
female, men over men. It's like we've been doing that for so long, and it's been so disruptive, And if you
Mm.
look at the timeline of the planet, when I was an undergraduate, I remember um one of my professors, and forgive the reference because it's an American reference, but he said, if the timeline of humanity is a football field, right? An American
Mm.
football field, you got 100 yards, right? He said the evolution that we've had before we had modern times, right, the last
Mhm.
10,000 years, is 99 yards.
Right.
So everything since, like, basically the pyramids, at least the timeline that's accepted in mainstream archaeology, is 1 yard.
Mhm.
So
Right.
for 99 yards, we've evolved, and we had a more symbiotic relationship with our environment.
Mhm.
The first the hunter gatherers, and then the pastorals, the nomads, and then once we shifted into agriculture, in some ways it was wonderful, but in
Mhm.
some ways we started this trend towards ownership and
Right.
defending and this whole shift towards patriarchy. But
Yeah.
before that, matriarchy and actually, honoring the feminine was just, it was innate, it was
Right.
conscious. So today, we are bringing that back, and it's kind of, shaking the foundations of the world around us.
Mm.
So to
And how?
me, we could
Yes.
start with that connection to Mother Earth, that
Right.
understanding that we are connected to all other living things, and that there's actually practices that we can do
Mhm.
that help to connect us.
Yeah. That was my next question. Like, how can we do that?
In With the Western paradigm, there's such an emphasis on logic
Mhm.
and the rational mind, and in some
Right.
ways, again, it was important. I'm not going to science came out of it,
Mhm.
technology, but we left behind that other side of our brain, and
Mhm.
we have it, we all have it, the poetic, the mystical, the part of the non-rational consciousness, right?
Right.
So with nature spirituality, there's an emphasis on accessing that side of our brain, accessing that through trance, through drumming, through song, through ritual,
Mhm.
through smaller community, like the idea that, you have a community of like minds. You can work in
Mhm.
circle with others, say in the
Right.
Wiccan tradition, or you know you could work in a lay, or in a community, say among
Right.
the Lukumi people, among the Centuria culture. And there's, we have models that, have been holding that space forever. We can look to the indigenous people around the world.
Right. I think there's so much gems that were lost along the way. We have so lost that touch with that. Like you said, that in indigenous, that was normal for so long and appreciated and honored for so long. And now that we have all this technology and the mindful, well, it's all about the mind instead of the mindful, really. But there's so much still to learn there in this culture of indigenous people. And I love that you write so much about that in your book, because I think we've kind of lost our way in this.
I agree. I agree. And you know, I mean, I think a perfect snapshot of it is if we look to Europe, right? You know, I have European ancestors on my father's side and my
Right,
mother's side, you know. And Europe is a perfect example of how that patriarchal mindset that became imperial was a prison within our brains where European people actually, you know, internalize that idea that everything that their forefathers and foremothers did for thousands of years, that
right,
indigenous, everybody's been indigenous, that
right.
connection to the earth, those practices, the
Yeah,
nature based. I mean, we have stone circles, right? In Europe,
right.
go back to 6, 7, 5,000
Oh
years, like
yeah,
in
look at
that time period,
Stonehenge. Yeah,
they're all aligned to the seasons, right?
yeah,
But when the you know, the imperial Catholic Church, let's say, came through, they demonized all that, and like
right,
you said, threw the baby out with the bathwater. So yes, were some things that were necessary to leave behind. Not everything from the pagan world was great, and we want to carry it forward,
right.
but there was a lot of things that were lost, and
Hmm.
those connections, those practices, those sacred rhythms, that ability to be in touch with the earth and be in relation to nature, you know.
Yeah, I think that's
So
the essence, really, that relationship to nature instead of just, well, it's just there.
right, it's just there, we can appreciate its beauty, but I have no connection to it. So how do we
Right.
get connected to it, you know? And you know, I know you had asked in your introductory emails, like, why is it important, you know? And
Hmm.
then we can look to places where the Western paradigm hasn't been so successfully in wiping it out, and we can look to the
Mm.
East, you know. And when you see Eastern traditions like Taoism and the practices such as Qigong, Tai Chi, you
Right.
know, there's ways that they have been, you know, seeing the body as this, you know, microcosm of the macrocosm, right? So you do these practices to raise energy, earth
Hmm.
energy, you know. We could even
Right.
compare it to the force if you want to use a Star Wars metaphor. But
Mhm.
that concept of the energy within us, that we are really, you know, just this energy being that needs to clean ourselves and stay in touch with the planet and stay in touch with the macrocosm, and really
Right.
recognize ourselves as that reflection. Their practices are there and we can learn
Mm.
from them.
And of course, like, the connection is also such an important word, because our society has so long, especially of course in COVID time, it was all, we were all divided. We couldn't even connect to the people that were closest to us. And that
Mm,
is, of course, what hurt the most for a lot of people, that you can't even hug your parents because it was dangerous. And how can we get back to that connection, not just with ourselves, but also with the people around us, and Mother Earth, really?
I love that question. It's so important too. I think that COVID time really, like, encapsulated that disconnection, that
Yeah,
isolation, that the end result of this, you know, individualist paradigm that's like, you know, wants us to be, we're all self-sufficient, we don't need anybody, this
right.
idea, like, where does that go? And
Hmm.
one of the people in mental health that I really admire is Gabor Mate. I
Right.
don't know, he's written a
Yeah.
lot about addiction, and he
Yeah.
says the the cure for addiction isn't just abstinence. It's really not abstinence, it's
Hmm.
connection.
Right.
And his theory is that we all are addicts in some way. We
Hmm.
we soothe ourselves in unhealthy, maladaptive ways. You know, it's a spectrum. So you have, like, you know, the ones that can be kind of sneered down on, the drug
Hmm.
addicts, the people
Right.
doing hard drugs, but then there's shopping, there's sex, there's gambling, there's internet addiction, there's
Hmm.
addiction to
Overeating.
other people, drama,
Right.
overeating, etc. We do it all.
Right.
And he says what's happening is we're feeling this, like, this hole of disconnection. So
Hmm.
the answer for our healing is really reconnecting
Hmm.
to one another, you know. In my book, I talk about things that I think are part of the shift that are really important,
Hmm.
and things like permaculture, the movement towards sustainability, towards growing your own food.
Yeah.
Seeing in even in cities now, in certain places that are more, progressive, you see them growing food on top of rooftops. And
Right.
in New York
Yeah.
City, we have the High Line, and it used to be a subway area, right? But now that that's not there, they redid it as a garden,
Oh,
and you
wonderful.
could walk along the High Line, and there's all sorts of it's a habitat for birds and for butterflies and for people, because we
Oh,
need that. We need that
wonderful.
connection to green, and there in mental health, we know that the green spaces and the blue spaces, green meaning
Right.
all the farms and forests and woods and parks. Even just being among the green helps your brain, it helps
Oh,
your
yeah.
soul, it helps your spirit. And the same with blue.
Yeah.
Like when you go to the ocean and you hear the sound of the waves, there's a certain, you get those negative ions, right, from the waves, and it just calms and soothes us. So that's how nature heals us.
Right. I would love to quote your book here. And it says, when a shaman had the experience of a mysterious sickness, which later resulted in new abilities, the culture offered validation for these abilities. Counter that with how mental illnesses are treated in Western culture. When people start seeing things or experiencing other realities, they are labeled mentally ill and believed to be in need of psychiatric care. So when and why did this shift?
It's a really good question. I was speaking to how mental illness can be culturally defined,
Mm-hmm.
and I really do believe that. And um, I think it happened over time. It happened over time with the rejection of altered states as
Mm-hmm.
valid, the
Right.
rejection of systems that trained people that had these abilities, the sensitivity. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in that same part of my book, I speak to this incredible find among geneticists that there was a mutation that happened among our DNA as early humans around the same time that art happened,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
But yet in that same genetic mutation, there's a tendency towards, these mental illnesses, schizophrenia, bipolar, things that create these moments of connection
Mm-hmm.
to this other world, right?
Right.
So today, we can look to, like they always say, like there's a very fine line between genius and madness,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right.
And in our Western culture, we lost the ability to see that validity.
Mm-hmm.
So that many people who have these early gifts, they have some kind of experience that connects them to this other world that's so normalized among the indigenous people
Right.
and early cultures. It becomes something to be frightened of. And I
Mm-hmm.
really believe that came from, the teachings of the church that said, anything that's not from the priest or what we say is sanctioned is unholy, it's bad, it's evil.
Mm-hmm.
You're seeing visions, you're hearing voices, it's evil. So
Right.
it's either feared, and then later science said, no, that's all delusion, that's not true, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Right.
So to me, it's like, as a modern mental health clinician, when somebody is with me, I can create a space that's safe for them to become regrounded,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can help them see that, at least acknowledge, the very least, treat them with humanity
Right.
and say, I don't, you're not invisible to me.
You're right.
I hear you. I want to hear what it is that the voices are saying. I want to hear, and what can we do to kind of like bring them back? And that's one of the things that, when it was recognized among early cultures and indigenous
Mm-hmm.
people, that somebody had this experience, they got sick, they came out with this shamanic visions, they would be trained. They would
Right.
be identified and they'd be trained
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was seen as a gift, as an
as a
ability to
gift. Exactly.
explore that further, right?
Right, right. Because the concept that we are more than one reality, right?
Right.
That we have this world that we agree on as reality, which if you
Mm-hmm.
look at the news today, it's already shows you how malleable that idea is, right? We've
Mm-hmm.
got, so
Right.
many different, depends on your bias, which side you're going to believe is
Oh, yeah.
real. Especially here in the United States, it's crazy.
Mm.
But, and then there's alternative realities. And physics tells us that, the multiple realities could be very much possible if you lean into quantum physics.
Mhm. Yeah, I think there's still a lot that needs to be learned in the mental health industry. I've dealt with severe anxiety and PTSD myself. So when I would
Hmm.
go to a psychiatrist or a mental health therapy coach, and they would literally just dismiss it and say, "Oh,
Yes.
no, I don't know. Heal yourself, help yourself. I can't help you." And they just
Mm.
didn't know what was going on, but I already felt and knew within me that I had PTSD, but that was just my
Hmm.
intuition
Hmm.
guiding me there. And
Right.
they didn't know what to do with that.
Right. Yes, we have so much to learn. Myself, when I was in my whole life, I've had experiences. I always had that ability. Since I was 4 years old, I had a near-death experience, excuse me. And I've had that connection to the spirit world, right?
Hmm. Right.
By the time I was in my early 20s, I want to say, I did have, a mental health breakdown. I had a paradigm shift that just
Right.
shattered my reality. At the time, being in college, I was experimenting, I was using drugs. Um, but the same thing, it was dismissed, it was demonized,
Hmm.
it was, delusional. I was put on medications. It was very scary, it was very
Yeah.
harmful.
And
Nobody
lonely.
really understood, and
Right.
lonely, right? But now, as an adult that has done a lot
Hmm.
of work on myself, I
Hmm.
realized that was my awakening. That was the beginning of
Right.
my awakening. Things
Yeah.
that helped me at that time were people that validated me. I
Hmm.
had one years later when I was, I had, and I would sometimes get these emergences. I say that's
Hmm.
called a spiritual emergence. Shortly before 9/11 happened, I had one of these experiences where I saw a sky that, I saw the New York City, and I saw the sky was all red, and I saw this people running around in panic, and people were holding these signs up, and
Hmm.
I was like, what's going on?
Right.
What is this? This is scary. I was so overwhelmed with fear. I woke up, I want to say maybe a week or two before it happened.
Hmm.
And I was, taking care of myself, going to the doctor, and I said to the
Hmm.
doctor, I said, can you tell me what this is? I'm scared. This feels really fearful to me. And he didn't invalidate me. He said, I
Hmm.
don't know, but I hear you. And
Right.
then it happened. And here in the United States, oh, and in my dream, you couldn't get away from it. It was everywhere. It was on your radio. It was on your TV.
Right.
Everyone was talking about it. I was living in New Jersey at the time, which is right outside of New York. And that's exactly what happened.
Right.
You couldn't get away from it. It was terrifying. You saw this guy, and the people were holding up signs about their loved ones that were lost.
Mm.
That's what
Right.
it was. That's what I saw. So,
Yeah.
how did I get that premonition? Spirit,
Right.
right? And that actually enabled me to realize, no, this isn't delusion. This is something that I was blessed with, and what am I going to
Yeah.
do with it, right? Does it
It's
make
a
me
gift.
better? Does it make me so special? No, it just makes me that I have something to share with people.
Exactly. It's a gift that you can or are free to explore.
Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly.
And I would love to use another quote from your
Okay.
wonderful book. It says, "One cannot evolve spiritually until they know who they are, learning both the positive and negative aspects of your heritage." So I would love to know, why is that so important?
Thank you so much. I think that that is another core belief in nature systems, is that we must honor our ancestors.
Hmm.
This is something that um, it goes way back in
Hmm.
many cultures for different reasons. First of all, because you remember your story, you remember your history.
Hmm.
Second of all, there was in early times, people would be, if you didn't honor your ancestors, being that we really, understand that they're in spirit now, they're not
Hmm.
here, but they're in spirit, we can connect with them, they could get angry at us, right? And
Hmm.
they could like not help us when we need them, because
Right.
the first people in spirit that would want to help you are the people that care about you, because you're their link to the future, to the
Hmm.
descendants, right? So honoring them helps not just them and lifts their elevation, it helps us, and then it helps our descendants, right?
Hmm.
um Everybody has ancestors, obviously. We wouldn't be here if we didn't go back a
Hmm.
long, long line. Here in the United States, like myself, I have ancestors from different cultures, very varying. I on my mother's side, I'm Puerto Rican, and I have Spanish, I have African, and I have Native American, the Taino people. that were in the Caribbean when Columbus came over, and the things that he said and the things that he did and the way the Spanish brutalized those people. It was horrible, right? The Spanish were terrible to not just the indigenous people in the New World, but also to the Africans that they enslaved, right? On my father's side, I am Dutch. I have they go back way back to the, I think I did my own lineage. It was about 13 centuries back to the first early Dutch. And my father's side also has Irish, who have been oppressed by the British for a very long time, right? So we have to look at who we are. As my godfather says, if we don't know who we are and we don't know the resilience that they all had, the gifts that all of those ancestors had, but also their liabilities, that what we need to heal from. In my country, it's racism. I have to acknowledge that, yes, my ancestors were both enslaved and slave owners. Okay. I cannot deny that. I have to see that's a weakness that I want to heal. Epigenetics teaches us that we not only inherit like these, biological traits, these physical phenotype, how we look, how we present ourselves on our face, but we inherit a lot of traits, our ability for music, our ability for mathematics, our ability to be resilient, to be strong, to be, and so we have to acknowledge, we have to help heal our ancestors from these parts of them that were, unhealthy, but then hopefully also claim the parts of them that we can be proud of.
It's almost like your heritage is like a blueprint for your soul and how you can heal from all those lifetimes.
I love that. That's a beautiful metaphor. Yeah, a blueprint for your soul. Right. That your soul makeup, it kind of, if we look at our heritage deeply, we can see, it can help us see the choices that our soul made to come here and to work on while we're here. Because that's really while we're here. And, I in Spiritism, which is one of my practices, it says like sometimes, in lifetimes, you might get a restful lifetime where your life isn't as stressful or strainful, but there's other lifetimes that you've got a lot of work to do. And I think everybody born in the world today, we have a lot of work to do. We all have our own challenges. It is the school of hard knocks, if you want to look at it that way. In Spiritism, it says that in among the multiple universes and in the universe, there's other planets that we may evolve to in our next lifetime. We're all on this journey, but while we're here, I really think it's important we do the best to make a difference and to be part of like the healing of ourselves and the planet.
And in your everyday life, how do you practice your spirituality?
Well, I think that I really do honor my calling to be part of the change. So my work is right now I work with people at a community mental health center most full time during the week. I also have a lot of personal clients in spiritual counseling. And I kind of work with people, to help them be the best that they can be to access their highest potential. And for myself, I really believe that it's so vital for us to practice self-care, and that could be simply trying to eat well, trying to exercise, trying to get enough sleep, being in touch with nature. I moved out of the city a few years right before COVID. I got this real strong message saying, you should buy some land in the country. And I was like, we were kind of happy. We had a nice neighborhood. I was like, I just feel really strong. Maybe we should move up to a couple hours north, which is the area we used to like to go camping in. It's always calm and beautiful up here in the Hudson Valley. And I went to the Parliament of the World Religions, and some gentleman was speaking, and he said, for me, if I'm practicing in nature spirituality, I really need to be in nature. It was just so simple. And I was like, you know what? I need to get out of the city, and it was always a joy of mine to think of like having a little land and having a nice garden and being among the trees. And that's what we did. And it all worked out really well. And within 6 months, then COVID happened, and the neighborhood we were in, where so many people died, it was like one of the early waves of the disease. And I just wonder sometimes would I have been one of them? Was, I just thank my spirits. I think that I'm open to them. And I just try to, make sure to be in touch, go out for a walk, be with now it's like planting season here, it's just coming out of the cold and it's beautiful, and
Yeah.
trying to be in rhythm with the seasons, honoring them in each their own way.
Well, my last question is also always the same, and that is, when are you at your happiest? But I think you've almost answered that.
Thank you. When am I at my happiness? That's a great question. I think a lot of us crave those peak experiences, right? When you have some kind of like mystical moment that's almost, and it could be spontaneous, it could be something you work toward, but it kind of opens you up to the greater world and to, I want to say it's like a zoom out, right? And when I can get that feeling, and it could be anything from like going to a museum and seeing a picture of space and realizing I'm just this tiny little person on this little planet that's so insignificant in the greater scheme of things. Or it could be in a community where, we just had a beautiful ceremony or something, or it could be with my family. But I think it's that I'm happiest when I feel really at one and at peace with others, that I'm not struggling and I'm not fighting, I'm not resisting, I'm not resisting everything,
Yeah, in flow and in connection.
Yes, beautiful. That's it's one thing I love about Taoism, the concept of being in the flow instead of resisting things. I think we could learn so much from Eastern traditions. They've been so preserved for so long.
Yeah, for a good reason. Well, thank you so much, Ellen. It was truly an honor to talk to you, really.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I, just to say, I hope that those who do practice nature traditions will take a look at my book. I think it's very inclusive. I tried to include, being that I've had a long practice of this, and I belong to different communities, people that practice Western nature traditions, people that practice indigenous traditions, and people that practice Afro-Caribbean traditions. These are all nature based systems. So I hope that you can find Relighting the Cauldron either at the publisher, which is Llewellyn Publications, or through your favorite bookstores.
Yes. Well, thank you so much. I will put a link in the description box where you can purchase the book. So I can highly recommend it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Then it's a pleasure to meet you, and thank you for doing your work. It's really important.
Thank you.